Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Catalog and Cocktails. It's your honest, no BS, non-salesy conversation about enterprise data management with tasty beverages in hand. Brought to you by Data.World, the enterprise data catalog for the modern data stack. I'm Tim Gasper, longtime data nerd and product guy at Data.World, joined by Juan.
Hey, I'm Juan. How are you, Tim?
I'm doing
We're
good.
Great. And now we're both in the same place.
We are.
We're in Austin.
Austin HQ, Data.World HQ.
There we go. I have gone around the world in the last couple of weeks.
I know. I feel like you've been gone for a while, but now you're back.
Yeah, we're here. So it is great to be back. It is on Austin. It is Wednesday. It is middle of the week, end of the day, and having a nice whiskey here. We'll talk about it in a second.
It's hot outside, too. We need an icy cocktail.
And before I introduce our guest, I want to go say thank you to all our listeners. And I've been starting to talk to our listeners this week. I spoke with Sarah Hampton. Sarah, if you're listening, I know you usually listen live. Thank you so much for your time, because we want to be really to learn what people are talking about, what they're thinking. Give us feedback. So if you want to give us feedback, please reach out to us on LinkedIn. Email me at juan@data.world. We want to hear from you. And if you do, we'll send you t-shirts. We're going to ramp up a merchandise store, because I think from all the feedback we got, people want t-shirts. So contact us and we'll send you t-shirts. All right. So with that, today, this is going to be a fun conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to talk with Sanjeev Mohan. He is a former Gartner analyst, principal at SanjMo. And the cool thing about Sanjeev is that he is an honest no BS guy. And he's an analyst who, has to go manage all the situations that analysts go in, but now he's in the independent, and he's talking to so many people. And every time I talk to Sanjeev, we just end up talking for hours and hours. So this is gonna be an awesome conversation, and we're just gonna talk about all things data analytics. Sanjeev, it is a pleasure to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on this show. I love talking to both of you. I love the collaboration we've had in the past. And I just have to say that I'm literally high on data,
Love it.
It's such an exciting space right now. In fact, sometimes I feel like this is like the dot-com boom time without the irrational exuberance. But we know what happened to dot-com boom. So hopefully, we know a recession is coming, and hopefully it won't be that bad. But as of now, it's just exciting times.
Well, we'll get into a lot of these topics of what's really going on here. But before we do, what are we drinking? What are we toasting for? Sanjeev, you take us off, because I know you're in an interesting place right now.
Yes. So I am right now in Javits Center in New York City at a vendor event. And unfortunately, I went looking in the expo hall for an alcoholic beverage, which I need to talk to both of you. I'm just kidding. But I couldn't find one. So I'm with my trusty water bottle. I am an environmentalist at heart. I refuse to use a plastic glass. I have flown like you 1,000,000 miles, but I do not use a plastic glass. I only bring my own container. So I'm drinking water. Sorry.
All right, same thing. I do have my trusted water bottle, and I actually have now my coffee mug, and I'm like,
Yes,
like that's my way to kind of contribute a little bit. So
yes.
What are you drinking here?
I'm drinking some still Austin whiskey with some key lime soda. So a little lo-fi today. In the office, our catalog game is not as strong.
Yeah, we need to go through it, because
we need to set up our full cocktail bar.
This is not good. I'm having I brought some bitters that I left them here in my office just to say I added something. So I have bitters with Elijah Craig rye, when I'm having. Also a splash of LaCroix. But anyways, cheers to just like, what do you want to go cheers to?
Cheers to data, and cheers to sustainability. I like that.
There we go.
Cheers. Yeah, there you go. Good topics.
Go ahead. All right, our warm-up question today.
Yes.
In the Magic Quadrant of summer foods, what goes in the leader quadrant and what goes in the niche?
Ooh, what a question. I don't know how you come up with these questions, but I think the most exciting space in Magic Quadrant for food, in food industry, is vegan food. The amount of development that's going on in the vegan space is mind-blowing. it even blows away what's happening in data management, because these companies are coming up with new and innovative ways of new food. And I'm not talking about Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat. Those are like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. Those are software projects, by the way. I am talking about, concocting new dishes using natural ingredients. So that's in leader quadrant. Uh, Not everybody is vegan. Not everyone will like this answer. But I feel like at some point, 10, 15 years from now, most of us will be pushed into that space. Because what's a niche? Steaks. And I know you guys are from Texas.
Okay, this is I would
I
actually
like it.
I like this, right? Yeah.
I had some tofu for lunch, so I'm on board. I'm
There you
already
go.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had a Taco Deli steak and pork.
Oh, that was the
tacos.
opposite. That was different.
Well, do you have a good answer? I don't know.
I don't know. I thought that was pretty creative,
Yeah.
Sanjeev. You really rolled with that one.
Yeah, I can't beat that one. I would just give you that one.
I,
That was
I,
great.
I honestly got distracted by the idea of the cool vendor. I was like, okay, if vegan food is in the top
Yes.
right, I wonder who's the cool vendor, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I love where
Yes.
All right, well, I'm sure there's some food podcast people are listening to
Yeah.
that they actually are talking about this stuff. But
Yeah.
all right, let's get into our topic today. Sanjeev, you are talking to a lot of people, right? Vendors, practitioners, leaderships. So, what is the honest, no BS challenges that you're seeing across the space from large and small organizations, what they're facing right now with data analytics?
Good question. I would say one of the biggest challenges is organizations trying to parse what is going on in the data and analytics space. I feel that there's micro segmentation going on. Every layer and sub layer is getting disaggregated into its own thing, with 20 different vendors saying, yeah, we do the same thing. I'll just give you an example. Like, for example, we never heard of something called reverse ETL. All of a sudden, reverse ETL comes up, and it's like, it's a must-have technology. Okay. But then so many vendors come into reverse ETL that the reverse ETL vendors start backing off, and they say, no, 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 we are no longer reverse ETL. Then what do you do? Oh, I'm a data activation layer. I'm an operational analytics layer. So you see, so I think from an end user's point of view, just keeping up, like, people like me, we get paid to play in this playground, but end users have a day job. And I think their biggest problem is, how do I select a technology that will future proof me for the next 5 to 7 years? I'm set. But I'm not looking to see, oh wow, the winds have shifted, now I have to go look for something entirely different. I think that can be a big challenge.
So this is interesting because you're saying that the challenge right now is not actually, the first thing that you said
Yeah.
when we asked the question is, it's not actually data problems, it's the vendors. Like the problem, one of the largest problems right now is that there's just so many vendors out there. And I agree with you. Right now, every single feature,
Yeah.
not every single feature, but features are becoming categories by themselves and all these vendors. And I'm like,
Right.
we say all the time, like, what? So there's like, you put the whole landscape of the modern data stack and all the ML and all these things is like, right. So you really need to go acquire 15, 20 different tools. And there's, I don't know how many vendors for each one. So how the heck do you evaluate all these
Do you
things?
need a data monitoring tool and a data alerting tool and a data this tool and a data that tool? And before you know it, like, well, what if these things don't come together in a cohesive way? And then you mentioned future proofing, right?
Yeah. I tell my clients that, I know you're not going to boil the ocean in one shot, but have a systems thinking. Like, look at like, if you're going to go into digital transformation, then, look at it from a holistic point of view. And then whatever you pick, keep in mind that 2 years down the road, you may pick a data observability tool, or you may pick a metrics layer might be like, come to fruition, and you'll pick a metrics layer. So you don't want to have bottoms up decision where you're picking things, like different people are picking things independent of the overarching strategy or theory, or so start with a big picture, but start small, but have that strategy in mind.
So we've had this conversation with many people about the core modern data stack.
Right.
What is Sanjeev's core modern data stack? What are the core things that the minimal, the viable thing that you should start off with, and then how would you expand?
So, modern data stack is like many terms. If you remember, I did the keynote at your data.world summit, and I had a slide on the tyranny of jargons. I find modern data stack falls in that. For some people, modern data stack is Fivetran HVR for ingestion, DBT for transformation, Snowflake for analytics. But I think it's a lot more than that. Those are the building blocks for analytics. But by the way, when we talk about modern data stack, we completely ignore or forget that there's a whole operational piece to it, and we go straight to analytics. So, in my mind, a modern data stack would include an operational and analytical database. Hopefully, there's some synergy. They're not, one is from Mars and one is from Venus. So they're, sort of tied together. So I have my persistence layer, I have my data integration, data transformation layer, and then I have my data consumption. So I've got data producers, data enablers, and data consumers. Data enablers in the middle, they are the ones who are doing things like data ops, data transformation, data governance, data security, access control. So there's a lot going on, but those are I would say a modern data stack we should think of it in those three pillars: producers, enablers, consumers.
Okay, so I want to dig into one thing here. You
Sure.
started off saying operational databases, and
Yes.
kind of more. What do you define as an operational database here?
Yes. So an operational or transactional database are literally the sort of the systems of record. Like, it
Okay.
could be a help desk, it could be customer management, ERP. In case of hospital, medical, it's an EMR or EHR, electronic medical record, electronic
But these
health
are
record.
SaaS applications nowadays tend to be, right?
Correct. Yeah, they're applications. And by the way, that whole space could get disaggregated too in a few years. Like the way this technology is changing, we could be rewriting these monolithic ERP applications on an object store with a business logic on top. So that I think that's the next big thing that will change.
I like this. I think this is. I'm starting to go see people talking
Yeah.
about this stuff. I think this is where you start bringing in the semantics come in, because at the end of
Yes.
the day, what you
Correct.
really want to go do is uh, the business logic and
Right.
the application. Like these things need, if they're connected in a way, like
Yeah.
our lives are going to be much easier. Like we should really be thinking about the business logic for an application. It should just be a query, a database query workload. And right
Correct.
now we just have these gigantic separations of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you want to have these semantic layers and metrics layer, because you're dealing with the
Yeah.
application centric view, and we want to have the data knowledge centric view. So that's a great point of what we're going to go to, but I think we're far away from that yet. Because
Yes, that is true. That piece is far away, and so that's why I don't want to go there. I don't include that in modern data stack. But modern data stack, to me, consists of technologies in all of these spaces, but they're sort of integrated in some way. I have two options. I can do best of breed, and I can get the best database here and the best data catalog and the best BI tool, and then I have to figure out how to integrate them together. The other option is get an integrated solution, and I think the trend will be towards some sort of integration that's already happened. Maybe it's through bidirectional APIs, so they're exchanging metadata. So if I'm doing data quality is not a standalone piece. Data quality is integrated with my data catalog. So data catalog does a discovery, tags, creates a metadata, data catalog remediates and updates the data catalog. You see, so there's like synergy. There's some sort of integration that has happened.
So the more that these things are able to, so even if it's best of breed and separate, the more that
Yeah.
these integrate and interoperate better together,
Yeah,
ultimately those are going to be the kinds of solutions that people want to adopt.
that is correct. Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so I think we're getting some good takeaways here about your perspective around sort of your modern data stack, even though maybe that's not the perspective or, the terminology that you might necessarily use here. Just to come back a little bit to this idea of, the operational databases and SaaS tools and things like that. I think that's interesting that you bring that up in the context of sort of the data approach. I noticed that a lot of folks, when they talk about the modern data stack, they almost try to position it like it's separate, like it's its own special thing that sits off to the side. What's some of your reasoning on kind of like having a bigger picture when you think about the data stack?
So, I really feel that we means all of us in the IT industry, we live in our own echo chamber, and we are reading the same people, we are reading the same blogs every week.
And we're kind of going in circles. What I say,
Yes.
right? You're on a bicycle. Like, this is the main image I've been doing. Like, you're in a bicycle going around in circles.
Yes, exactly. So sometimes, when I talk to the end users, they come back and they say, we don't care what the category is. I have a business problem to solve, and I need you to tell me how to solve the problem. You can call it whatever you want. I remember many years ago, the place where I worked, we had a raging debate: is it data governance or is it information governance? Is it data quality or information quality? The clients don't care. They're like, I'm desperate, I'm dying with data quality problems. Somebody please give me something that works, because everything in the last 40 years has not worked. And now I have a problem, because now I'm doing predictive analytics, I'm doing machine learning. So the stakes are much higher, and my problem is not solved. So I have basic foundational problem. I don't care what you industry people
Right.
categorize it as.
But why is that still the case? I mean, why do we continue to fall in this trap of technology all the time and thinking about the category? I mean, I'm literally kind of out of words now, because I say this constantly all the time, but when we go back again on the technology, like, why are we having the same problems that we've been arguing for the last 30 years? Why?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. Why we haven't solved these. Maybe the technology was not there, like at scale. Maybe we had technology, but we relied too much on Excel as our tool of choice at the end of the day. Now we cannot do it. So now I'm just guessing it. Like, now that we have cloud and we have elasticity, we very easy to get so much power. Machine learning and so some of these technologies have come of age, and so I think we now have the shot to do it. Some of the concepts we use are from 1950s, 60s. Some of the machine learning algorithms are from there. I know data.world is really big into graph technologies. Graph is not anything new,
No.
but now we have the power, and I think now finally we are going to be able to tackle.
Yeah, I just hope that there's not something else that we're going to have this discussion in another 10, 15 years. And we're going to say in 10,
correct.
15 years, at that time, we didn't have X, and X is going to be. And then I'm like, but wait, no, I mean, right now we're saying this is the time to go do this. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to imagine, 15 years from now, what we're going to wish that we could tell our current selves, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, during the dot-com boom days, we thought we had cracked the nut, and this is it. We are in the golden age of computing, and but we were sorely mistaken. We focused so much on technology; it was all about getting eyeballs and not about business metrics, and that just crashed and burned. And now we think we are there, but history repeats. So
Right.
15 years from now, we might be having another podcast and going, what went wrong? Why didn't we fix it then?
Cataloging cocktails, bring the band back together, right?
Yes, yeah.
Sanjeev, there's a couple of really big trends that it feels like is going on in the data space that is a little different than sort of your traditional sort of just normally what's been happening around data, right? And one of them is around sort of metadata becoming a little bit more a part of the conversation. And it feels like even the modern data stack people who maybe were 3 or 4 years ago, very kind of focused on like, I need my ETL in my data warehouse. Even now that community is starting to broaden into like, oh, wait, metadata, semantics, things like that. And then the second is around sort of this, like this emergence of, either excitement or not excitement around things like data mesh, right? Like the sort of the socio-technical combination, people, process, technology working together. Which is not a conversation that hasn't happened before, but has some new life and some new tools and new frameworks to think about, right? Maybe just starting with metadata.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on how metadata fits into how you see the data stack and what we need to do as part of our data strategy?
My Gartner colleagues used to joke, I never met a data I didn't like. So I think
that could be a t-shirt for us. I've never met data I didn't like.
I think metadata is really the glue. That's the key that is now that's letting us connect different pieces. Like you said, now even if I do data transformation, I have metadata. Without metadata, having a common metadata, it's very hard for me to have a lineage to understand what's going on. In fact, I'm such a strong believer in metadata that I believe metadata should be the master or the leader that drives data orchestration, data quality, data observability, data security and privacy. So all of these things should be driven by metadata. When I discover metadata and I tag it into a business semantic layer, now I start observing, did somebody leave my buckets open? I have a metadata for buckets, so now it's a security problem. Did my data volume suddenly unexplainably fall? If so, then go call data orchestrator and do a triage. So you see, to me, metadata becomes the driver, and everything should hinge on metadata. In the past, metadata was like the offshoot. It was the exhaust.
Right.
And we didn't do much with it, mainly because it was mostly technical metadata. So what can you do with technical metadata? You can profile your data and you can do a histogram, but it's a snapshot in time. Now, it's not a snapshot in time, it's continuous. As data comes in, metadata gets generated. As metadata gets generated, we take the next best action based on metadata.
So is this something that going back into, we talk about history, like, what's like, we've been talking about these problems and why they continue to be a problem today? That is something that we didn't talk about that as much 10, 15 years ago about metadata, right? It was an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
And so that has now turned into a first-class citizen. I think that's a change that has to happen, right? I think
correct.
So I would say that is a change. Second is the cloud definitely has accelerated, has led us things to be somehow cheaper too. You can now set up, do all this pipeline, all these things with click, and now you have a warehouse and you have data put into it, right? Now there's more things around it, but very quickly you can do that. So I think those are the changes that we have seen compared to the past, right? That has really changed.
So I just want to mention one more point, because you mentioned moving to the cloud. So literally there's a stampede to move to the cloud. But what has happened in recent months and years is that it's so easy to get started on the cloud. Companies moved lift and shift, or they moved into the cloud, and now they're complaining about cost. So metadata is actually a way out, because metadata can tell me what are my critical data elements, what is the usage, why should I move it to the cloud? If my workload is constantly being used and I'm not going to take advantage of elasticity, or if my usage shows that I have not touched this piece of data in 5 years, most likely I should not move it to the cloud.
So I'm loving that you're saying this, and I think this is one of the reasons why. I mean, non-salesy. And put this aside, but because
Yeah.
I generally believe this is metadata is everything there is connected, right?
Right.
Because you think about it, it's well, these things are part of X is part of Y, and X was derived from Y, right? So this table is part of a database. These columns are part of a table. These views are here. These views take us input something and they generate something. So, right, it's always about a movement of things, right? So
Mhm.
that naturally gets represented as it's a graph, right? I mean, it's a mental model, and the interesting thing is that the mental model, the schema about metadata is fairly simple compared to like just
Yeah.
broader how the business
Right.
works. And the thing
Right.
is that it's also the same, almost the same type of scheme applicable to almost any types of source that you think about it. So
Mhm.
the scheme of a relational database of how you represent metadata, I don't care if it's a Snowflake, Oracle, SQL Server. Yes, they're different. There's some nuances, but it's the same thing essentially. So I think that's one of the aspects there, is that metadata naturally is a graph. And now when you start thinking about kind of the lift and shift, and I'm migrating to the cloud and we go through these expenses, I see this as a graph problem too, because I'm like, hey, if I represent my ecosystem today and it's all connected, what are my most important nodes in my graph? Oh,
Mhm.
like a particular node is a stored procedure that takes as input, I don't know, 50 tables, and it outputs to another 60 tables. Like that's a very important node.
Yeah.
Uh, that's probably something you should consider and take a look into that, right? Or you look at a graph and you're saying, hey, there's all these little isolated subgraphs around here. They don't touch anything. And then you put some context around it. You just says like, hey, nobody's using this. Maybe I don't even have to pay attention to it. So I think looking at this problem as a graph and you bring in like graph analytics into it, this
Yeah.
is something I personally found really, really interesting when you're thinking about how to go migrate to the cloud. So
Mhm.
So,
anyways,
so one, I learned something just right now because I never thought of it that way. I mean, I've always believed that yeah, metadata is a graph, but because in graph it's so easy to do centrality, so you can. I mean, it's just natural born way of seeing what is more important than others. Like in a relational, there is no way you can ever tell that, you know. So but in graph, this kind of like algorithms are just they come out of the box. So that's very interesting. And the other interesting thing you mentioned is like stored procedure. In the past, when we did metadata, it was all structured data. So we did tables, columns, primary key, owners, that kind of stuff. But and so we could find missing values and we can do data types and all that. But now our metadata is for structured data, semi-structured data. That's relatively easy. But unstructured data, now that is hard because now you need natural language processing that understands the domain and extracts some entity, which
Mhm.
becomes metadata. But then you've got code, you've got reports. Reports, everybody does reports, but you've got all kinds of like if my data is coming on a Kafka topic, then I need metadata for my topic. If I have machine learning models, I need metadata for my models. So the scope of catalog has just naturally expanded.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that a lot too, from our perspective too. Is that like
Mhm.
I think catalog originally was kind of seen as like a subset of metadata management, right? It's a
Yeah.
feature kind of as the card catalog kind of thing, right? But
Right.
more and more now, actually, metadata management I think is even seen as being like a feature or a use case on the
Right.
catalog. And the
Correct.
catalog might do some of your observability. It might be involved in sort of metadata activation and things
Right.
like that, orchestration, right? So the catalog has become a very broad concept now, which is interesting.
Yeah, and that is so that leads to the problem. See, every silver lining has a dark cloud. So so now what's happened is that every product has a data catalog. So there are 70 pure play data catalog, but everybody has a data catalog. And companies now have 4 5 different data catalogs. And but to your point, data catalog is a system of record for metadata. How I access data catalog may not be directly through data catalog. Maybe that data catalog is headless. And what I mean by that is In the past, I could go to Slack and I can say, hey, I'm a new employee. Where can I find information about employees' email addresses? Because compliance department is telling me to mask email addresses because of GDPR. So some subject matter experts would reply to me in Slack. Today, if I do that search in Slack, what if the data catalog replies to me?
Yep.
And I don't even know. It's a robot that's just replied to me. All I got my answer, and it's comprehensive.
And this is the point that you're saying earlier, is like users just want a solution. They
Yeah.
they don't give a fuck about what's underneath the stuff, right? They're just like, give me an answer to the question.
Right.
Well, in that sense, does a catalog have to be like truly like a card catalog where you browse it, or can a catalog, or more broadly a metadata solution, can it actually fade into the background and
Right.
really metadata, whether you know it or not, it's in a metadata infused and a metadata contextual experience.
Absolutely.
I do think that I do think my perspective, I don't know, maybe we kind of just, I'm curious to see if we agree here, Tim, and also Sanjeev, is let's call it just metadata in general. Let's just call it the glue, because I think there's so much here I want to unpack. Is that invisible? Yes. But that doesn't mean that it's only invisible.
Right.
I think it's important. So a lot of the analogies I've been talking about with all the data products, and I think about we still need a place where you need to go shop. Like, you still go to Amazon to go buy things. Like, I mean, the product arrived to your house and that's what you wanted, but you still had an experience of going through Amazon and shopping and buying and comparing all that stuff. And I think that experience is what I would consider also part of a catalog. And you actually went into that catalog. Would I go in and buy things by chatting on a on a bot or whatever? No, I still want to go through the traditional quote unquote catalog and go buy that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But another interface to my catalog to Amazon is talking to Alexa, right? That's another experience. Like, Alexa is now talking to that. Let's call it that the catalog there. What is Amazon? So I think we need to. That's my position here. So it's not just completely invisible. Like it. I still, depending on the users and the use case, I'm going to go in and search for that stuff too.
Yeah. There's different user experiences on top of metadata.
Yeah. It's like 50 shades of data catalog. Optionality,
You are so full of all these great questions today. I love this. I
was actually thinking of, what is that Simon and Garfunkel song, 7 Ways to Forget Your Lover? No, what's the number? So basically, okay.
That's the name of the song. I don't remember the exact right number.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Our commenters know. Please leave a comment on LinkedIn that is going to be important for your professional network to know. But it'll be helpful to us.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
But one of the things, I love how we're talking so much about metadata and our passion for metadata here. And I think what's important is that the metadata, again, it's a means to an end, right? People, and what it's actually providing is all this context. I think, right? And I think, and we need to think metadata, as you said, it's not just technical aspect.
Yeah.
And this is what I've been talking to more people, and this is kind of my messaging right now, is like, we need to start cataloging the knowledge, start cataloging the questions people are asking, and the who's asking them, and let's catalog the hypotheses that people have, the outcomes that have had. So I think this is more of those things that we need to consider, which, yeah, it's technically metadata in a way. I mean, but that's what we need to go to. I mean, that's my position and my vision right now. I don't know. What do you think about that, Sanjeev? What I mean?
Yeah, I'm completely with you. Yeah, 100% agree.
Okay, great. I'm not crazy.
Yep. No. So by the way, I have to say that we are living in such changing times that we're not crazy. I mean, in my opinion, there are no experts. We are all learning as we go, and we are literally a step or two ahead of others. And and things change. It's like depending upon who you talk to, people are like vendors are coming from different directions, but they're kind of converging, because they're adding functionality that others have. So they're converging, but they said this is the best way to do it. So I just feel that, experts are hard to find. All they're doing is they're just diligently learning the topic and have the humility to not call themselves an expert, and just keep talk to people, learn different things, and our views change.
And I guess honest, no BS. Be cautious when people call themselves an expert in a topic.
Yeah, I guess what's your recommendation on how folks should navigate this? Because I think that, everybody is hungry for expertise, but also cautious of sort of a know-it-all mentality that says like the answer to all your prayers is operational analytics or something like that, right? And
Right.
I think we've all been trained not just as a data space, but as people, people in general, to be cautious of that kind of language. I guess how do you navigate it when there isn't a clear right or wrong answer?
There is no other way but to experiment. You will not know whether the answer is right or wrong unless you apply to your own use case, your own problem statement. How would you know? I mean, you can talk to any number of data warehouse vendors and they'll tell you we are the best, we are the fastest. But your requirement, your query workload may be such that they may not be the fastest. And and you cannot look at benchmarks because people cherry pick only the queries which ran the best for their product, and the queries that did not run in that TPC DS or TPCH, they may not even talk about it. So basically you have to do your own experiment, and I know that takes time. Not everyone has the skills, but that's the only way out, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I want to talk about getting into the principles, because I think this is something that we should be doing. But I do want to kind of take a quick pause here and always say thank you to Data.World. Right? This episode is brought to you by Data.World, the enterprise data catalog for the modern data stack. Data.World makes data discovery, governance, and analysis easy, turning data workers into knowledge superheroes. To learn more, visit Data.World. So last week I was in Madrid, and I was in Madrid because I was visiting the Technical University of Madrid, giving a course on agile data governance for the Masters in AI program. And I did this little experiment, which was educating everybody about the modern data stack. And it's very interesting to see people like, I think we live in this bubble about all the tools, and I kind of go out and I'm like, these are people in their, I mean, they're either they finished their undergrad recently, or they're working and they're kind of getting a master's to figure out what's next. And they're like, I had no idea about all these tools that came out. So we went through the history of kind of data integration and your traditional ETL tools and data warehouse and stuff. And these are things that they've seen for a while, right? And we all took like 20 minutes, and I said, just Google modern data stack, look for images, and let's go analyze them and go see all these things. And then we sat down and said, okay, we're not going to talk about technology. We're not going to talk about tools. Let's go talk about the principles of stuff. And what came out of this discussion was the principles were, I need to store things. Okay, you need to store, you need to be able to go query them. Perfect. You need to go make an analysis about that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. I need to move my data from the sources to the storage layer. So there's some movement. What was interesting is that they acknowledged that that movement was actually three parts. There was like understanding the meaning, connecting that meaning to the source, and then the actual action of moving the data. And then so if we zoom out, that's like kind of ETL, but the T kind of split out, and then the storage. So that was interesting. That is like we see all this technology and what we're seeing today, the principles kind of continued the test of time over the last 22 decades. But what happened, which I really found fascinating, is that we start looking at all these tools and like, well, there's a catalog and there's quality and then there's this thing and that thing and blah, blah, blah. And all the students ended up kind of agreeing, saying, yeah, there's kind of like one layer that touches everything, because talk about quality. Like this is somebody said, but quality, I need the quality in my analytics. But somebody said, but I also want the quality in my dashboard, in my storage, but I also want the quality in the source. I'm like, yeah. And then somebody else came up with this other thing, like you want it all over the place. So now that you're bringing up, like we talked about the glue, I'm like, there is this layer that touches everything. And I think that's that metadata, the glue stuff, that it is really hard to, I think at this moment, to separate in different parts. But the principles, I mean, they lived a test of time. What we're seeing 20, 30 years ago are the same things we see today. And I think it's really important to think about it as the principles. What are the inputs and what are the outputs? Mm-hmm. And that's a way to kind of not get so bogged down into the technology. Anyway,
so Juan, I think context is really important here. I think that's what you're pointing out. Like, for example, let's say, I'm looking, I'm using technology to see if I'm missing data. So I scan through my database and I don't have missing data. So I'm like, oh, good. But I have city named San Francisco and the state is Alabama. Maybe there is a San Francisco in Alabama. Maybe it is correct. But the context can tell me that, wait, that just doesn't make sense. So you see, this is where our technology or our future solutions are going to, where they're looking at, the semantic values and the context, and they're saying, I don't have a problem that's a technical problem. I have a business mismatch. How do I know it's a business mismatch? It is because I've built a graph. And based on graph, I can say that, every San Francisco customer is in California. How can this San Francisco customer be in Alabama? Maybe there is a problem. And this is a much harder problem to solve than, a technical problem.
And this is why I caution everybody that it's not just about technology.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
This is data management is a social technical phenomenon. Right. And we've been focusing so much on the technical aspects.
Well, and in particular, just to tie it back to metadata, it's hard to get to a full solution on, even if we're just looking at things like quality, like you kind of just brought up that example, Sanjeev. It's hard to get to true sort of success there without more context.
Yes.
It's one of the things that I am cautious of, some, for example, observability tools and things like that, to kind of come in and say like, oh, freshness and nulls. And like, you look at those things and you solve your problems. And that there is a lot that you solve with that, like, no doubt. Right. But the next stage of this all is like, how do we get more contextually aware?
Yeah, that is true. And also, to take it a step further, observability has somehow become synonymous with data quality monitoring, which is not a new topic. But it's not just about, quality. It is about, how did my pipeline perform? Did it, perform on time? Did I use the right amount of resources? See, again, metadata is telling me that, you over provisioned your nodes and you paid 10 times more. So now there's cost, there's performance, there's reliability in addition to quality. That is true observability.
Sanjeev, we can keep talking for hours, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person. Well, before we wrap up and go to our lightning round stuff, something that I do appreciate is you're in this independent position right now, right? You're talking to so many people, and that kind of can be scary at points, and especially right now, you're talking about like we're maybe hitting a recession and stuff, and people are like, what's going to go on, right? People become independent.
Yeah.
I'd love to throw it to you and kind of give us some points of advice in this life of an independent analyst that you have right
now. Thank you for asking that. I have to say, take it from me, I started as an independent in my mid 50s. So if you listeners are in your 30s, I just have to tell you that what my story is. So every day I wake up with two things. One, a blank slate, and two, a sense of panic. And that panic is you can call it imposter syndrome. So I know people have been talking quite a bit about imposter syndrome, but all I have to say is love it, embrace it, and be thankful for it. If you don't have imposter syndrome, all of you in your 30s, 40s, then go get it. Because I'm sorry for you if you don't have imposter syndrome. That is how you're really pushing yourself. You're getting out of your comfort zone. And it's an artifact of our environment. It's not personal that I signed up to do something and I don't know how to do it, I shouldn't be doing it. No, it's my environment is changing. So so naturally I'm not going to uh, be on top of it. I have to go research, and I have to talk to people, and I have to ask, get on a Slack channel for, let's say, data mesh, and say, I data mesh is all around me, I don't know what to do, please help me. And you'll be amazed at how many people are there to help. So that is my life, as an independent advisor analyst. I now no longer I'm doing technology. Companies will ask me, so what is the ARR and NDR and ACV of this company? I'm like, since when have I become a financial guy? But guess what? I am now. So now I'm like trying to Google and see, how do I learn these things. That's it's that's I'm saying, all I'm saying is, be comfortable with it.
This is excellent advice. And actually, I love what you just said. Like, if you don't have imposter syndrome, I feel bad for you. Go get it. That's a very strong, bold thing. We didn't get the chance. I mean, very quickly, this is times that we've talked before. I brought up the ordinary versus the profound truths, right? So there's a quote by Niels Bohr: "Ordinary truth is one that whose opposite is a falsehood." Right, and then the profound truth is one that whose opposite is also profound truth.
Oh, wow.
And you can apply that for vision and a lot of these things, right? They say, well, databases need to be faster. That's an ordinary truth or ordinary vision, because of course the opposite is stupid, it's false. But what you just said is like, an imposter syndrome. Like, you should go get off imposter syndrome. I mean, the opposite of that is something. I mean, it's debatable, and that's why I think it's a very profound suggestion, recommendation that you gave here. Thank you for that. I never thought about that one.
Yeah.
Well, we can keep so much time about, but okay. So let's go into our lightning round, because we have more. So lightning round is presented by Data.World, the enterprise data catalog for the modern data stack. And I'm going to start with the first one.
Okay.
Is lineage one of the first use cases you should focus on around metadata?
No, I don't think so. I think your use case should be more organic. If you say I must have lineage as a first use case, maybe not. I think your first use case should be the most impactful problem that you've not been able to solve, not the low-hanging fruit.
Oh. Because usually if you do the quadrant of high value, low hanging fruit, right, more complicated, you want to find the highest value, the low hanging fruit.
Yeah, I mean, if I go to my boss and I say, by the way, life as an independent, my boss can't fire me anymore. So, and so also, if I have imposter syndrome, what do you do as a consultant? You go call a team meeting and you discuss. So when I call a team meeting, I'm usually talking to myself. So, but so my anyway, I've lost track of where I was going.
I love this. What we know now is that, Sanjeev, you talk to yourself a lot.
Yes.
The bathroom in front of the mirror is the conference room, right? No, just kidding.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Next question. So, we talked about this a lot, and actually, when you came and you talked at our summit, and we didn't get into it too much today, but around sort of adoption around sort of data tools and around metadata and things like that. And my question for you is, will catalogs eventually have more users in a company than a BI tool?
I think it's already starting to happen, because catalogs are subsuming some of the BI capabilities. So this allows me to do, it's not a replacement. So I just want to be very clear. I'm not going to do heavy duty drill down, drill sideways, and all of that. But if I want to visualize my data, if I want to get understanding of my data, I want to discover. I think that we will see a time when the catalogs will have more users than the BI tools.
All right. I think that's a vision that many people listening are really excited to hear from you. So,
I mean, how many millions of users do you have on data.world? Like 2 million, or maybe 20. I don't know how many.
We're at 1.6 million, something
One-
in that realm. Don't quote me on that, but
Yeah.
something like that.
No.
Yeah, and one of the reasons is because it's that you are cataloging, and it's easier to find a public data set through a catalog than to go directly and try to figure out like what's the schema of this, what does this mean, right?
Mhm.
So the more and more we catalog these data sets, the more it'll attract people to the catalogs.
All right, next question. So you talked about the value of an integrated approach.
Yeah.
Will metadata remain separate, or does it merge over time into the data plane, like your warehouse, your ETL, or your metadata engine? Or
Yeah, metadata becomes part of the story, and some like Snowflake, for instance. I've never heard Snowflake talk about metadata. It's just part of their offering, you know. So I that's how I see it. I don't want metadata to be its own thing, because if it becomes its own thing, then we are again talking about two different islands. So it should converge.
I like that idea of it being much more integrated, and maybe thinking about your data stack and your metadata stack being kind of the same thing. It's all part, metadata is just another
Right.
kind of data.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, next question. So we aren't really talking a lot these days about like big data, right? But remember when that was the hottest thing we could possibly be talking about every second,
Right.
right? Obviously today folks are really excited about various topics. Modern data stack is one of them, right? 10 years from now, do you think similar to kind of big data, the sort of this hype of like modern data stack is gonna fade? Are we gonna be talking about the modern data stack in 10 years?
100%. We'll call it something else because we love inventing terms and names. But the idea is for big data, the way I define big data is when the amount of data you have to process exceeds your existing capacity. Whether it's a mental capacity or physical or a resource, infrastructure, it doesn't matter. That's big data. And that is modern data stack. 10 years, 15 years from now, we'll be solving the same problem, but we'll have a more flowery term to call it.
I really hope that we're not solving the same problem in 10 years from now.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm afraid I wouldn't bet on it.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's go to our next segment here. If you remember, it's the Mesh Minute.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 minute to rant, pontificate about data mesh, whatever you want. Ready, set, go.
All right. Stop me. Okay, great. So data mesh conceptually is excellent. I'm a big fan of data mesh, but I've spoken to a number of people who have implemented data mesh. They are saying amazing things about what they've done, except when you start listening to them, you go, wait, so everybody is on the same infrastructure? What happened to self-service data infrastructure? They're like, no, we don't believe in that. So I think that like today, by the way, I attended a session on data mesh by a vendor, and to them, data mesh is an HTAP database, operational and analytical, with the BI and data science use cases on top through data federation. That is how they define data mesh. So data mesh is a term that is just, there is no clear definition. What Jean-Marc has defined is great. I'm a huge fan of what she's done, but execution is going to be a problem.
All right. I like that. Execution is going to be a problem, and not surprising, but
Yeah, and not everybody who claims to be implementing a mesh has truly embraced the principles exactly as they've been defined. And
Correct. Yeah.
Maybe that's because they should, and maybe it's because they shouldn't.
Right.
So,
all right, Tim, Tim, take us away with your takeaways.
Oh my goodness, so many good notes here, Sanjeev. Thank you for the conversation today. So I'll start by saying that you did a great job kind of posing what some of the problem and the situation is that we have today in the data space and how we talk about the data space. And you mentioned that there's a lot of micro segmentation going on, right?
Mhm.
Every layer is getting split up into lots of boxes, and you've got 20 vendors all raising their hand saying, I'm in that box, I'm in that box. Maybe I'm in multiple boxes, right? So we end up with the Matt Turk landscape
Yes.
view, right? With the millions of boxes and
Mad.
millions of logos,
Yeah.
right? You get things like, reverse detail, operational analytics, data activation. Every vendor, not only are they trying to figure out what box they sit in, because that's valuable, they also want to break out of the box, because breaking out of the box is valuable too. So, there's a lot of things going on there. And ultimately, it all comes back to, you mentioned customer value, customer problems. What are the problems that they are facing? They want to make the right solutions that solve their problems and be future proof and not just kind of follow wherever the wind is blowing, right? So I think that's an important takeaway for folks listening to this, right? Despite all the jargon, don't get caught up in that, right? Just listen to values, and to vendors that are listening, be customer centric, right?
Yeah.
Start with the big picture and then start small with your actions. I think
Correct.
that's a nice kind of dichotomy there. And we asked you about what is the Sanjeev modern data stack, right? And you had mentioned that, there's these building blocks like Fivetran, DBT, Snowflake, et cetera. But also, if you look bigger, right, it's also things like your operational database. It's things like your SaaS tools and things like that. A lot of the data is actually originating there. You should include this kind of operational layer in your way of looking at your data stack because, you've got problems to solve. It doesn't matter if it doesn't neatly fit into these modern data stack buckets. A lot of those SaaS tools are creating the data that you need in order to do your job, in order to understand what your business is doing. And if you care about things like quality and advanced analytics and ML and AI and things like that, it relies on the data that's in those operational systems in addition to what's in your analytical systems, right? So I thought that was really valuable. You talked about data producers, data enablers, and data consumers. And you talked about two options that you might want to do to approach your modern data stack. One is more like best of breed and then integrate them together. The other one being a more integrated solution where you buy sort of a platform or a suite. Either way, the different use cases, the different forms where information is going to be collected and sort of where metadata might be coming out of, those things better be able to work together, better be integrated, right?
Yep.
Juan, what about you?
Wow, we got so much stuff here. Metadata. We talk so much about metadata, and apparently you never met a data you didn't like, right? You gotta get that t-shirt. I never met a data I didn't like. Metadata is the glue. And I really love this, right? Because I think it truly is something that when you zoom out, it's like it's all over the place. Everything's emitted and everything, and it goes back to it, right? So, I mean, without the metadata, common metadata, it's so hard to understand what's really going on. And I like your position is that metadata should be the master. It should be the leader that drives the security, the privacy, the access, the transformation, right? Metadata is a driver for this. And like, how big of a driver? Like, we're all talking about moving to the cloud, and that's going to be the panacea for cost reduction. But now we actually go in and we're like actually paying more because we moved to the cloud. And why is that? How do we explain that? Metadata is the answer to that, right? So we also talked about reasons why metadata in a graph can be very effective, right? To analyze the relationships, the centrality, all these things. So looking at the metadata management problem as a graph, you're able to bring in all these other techniques about graph analytics. Talking about catalogs, right? Catalog and cocktails, right? Talking about data catalogs and how they can come up in different shapes, right? I really love how you say that it's invisible, it's headless, right? It can be a bot and automation, but we also had this good discussion. It's not just that, right? There can also be the marketplace, right? The way you search, and it depends on the experience of the user and the use case too. But it's important to acknowledge that metadata is just a means to an end, right? It provides all that context. And finally, I'm glad that you are kind of on board with the vision that I personally have here, is that metadata is not just a technical, and when we think about business metadata, it's about the questions people have and who's having them, the context, right? The hypotheses, the decisions, right? People, process, context. That's like the knowledge first world that I'm talking about. We live in changing times. No one is an expert. So actually, let's be very cautious when people say they're an expert. And how do you deal with this? like honestly, just gotta go try these things out. You gotta experiment, be very curious about it. And then finally, I love your final personal advice that you shared with everybody here about you being an independent analyst, being an independent role right now. I love this. You wake up with two things: a blank slate and a good sense of panic. And this notion of being an imposter, having imposter syndrome, go get it. If you're not have imposter syndrome, go get it. Get out of your comfort zone. Sanjeev, how did we do? What did we miss?
Amazing. This is the best part when you bring it all together. When I listen to your podcast, I'm like, oh, great. This is a summary, the summary section of a document. So that was amazing. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. So throw it back to you. We got 3 quick questions. 1, what's your advice? 2, who should we invite next? And 3, what are the resources that you follow? Who do you follow? What blogs or what events do you go to? What are the podcasts you listen to?
Okay, so if I start from the end, I listen, to a lot of podcasts. Basically from like analytics engineering podcast. There's Monday morning data chat. So I that's how I keep up to date. I'm listening to people who have spent a lot of time in this space, reading a lot of blogs. Every week I see, the people will send an email. Some of the influencers. Here are the most common blogs. Like Ben Stancil does an amazing job every week. It just amazes me. I wish I had his expertise of writing. So that's how I keep up to date. As far as inviting somebody, I didn't come thinking who would be a good person, but since I talked quite a bit about observability, if you haven't, had a lot of people from observability in your show, I would say there's one company that I think is doing it really well. It's Axel Data, and Rohit Chaudhary is a ex-Hortonworks guy who's been in this space forever. I think he might be a good addition on your show.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And then for the advice, I'm going to add your advice there, which is go get imposter syndrome.
Yes. Perfect.
Love it. All right. Next week, we are going to be in Snowflake Summit live. I will be there. Tim will be here in Austin. I will be in Vegas. And actually, our guest is going to be Peter Kapoor from Waste Management. And Peter's also a fantastic speaker and just has he's another honest, no BS guy who talks about, we're going to talk about the extracting value out of data. And with that, always thanks to Data.World, the enterprise data catalog for the modern data stack, for supporting us to let us do catalog cocktails every Wednesday. And thank you, Sanjeev. We appreciate you so much for all this amazing input, advice, and great puns. I love all this stuff. We have so much great comedic action today too.
Yeah.
You guys are responsible for it. Don't push me.
No, we'll push you too. You've been awesome, Sanjeev. We're here to entertain and educate. So cheers.
Cheers,
Sanjeev.
See you. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, Sanjeev. Right. That was great.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Right now.
Yeah.
Hold on one second.